on internet forums, there's this whole thing where if someone posts a picture of their gear and they say, here's my studio, I'm having a lot of fun, quite often you will see a reply that says words to the effect of, but do you make music? Where's your tunes? Or all the gear and no idea. There's a sort of concept that if someone has lots of gear and they don't make music, then that is somehow a kind of stigma. And the reality might be that they might make music, but they don't release it. And there's something that I want to argue in this video, which is that if you think about it, what a person is doing if they own a load of gear and they play around with it in any form or capacity, what they're doing is they're playing around and enjoying it for its own intrinsic rewards. The key word is intrinsic. That means that they're doing the thing because of the feeling of doing the thing, not because of some external reward. That is to say, releasing music. So in fact, I might make a case that a person who has a load of gear and is just enjoying it on any terms that they define, but that is not putting music out and expecting positivity to come back to them, those people arguably are perhaps, in a sense, the true musicians. If musician isn't really the right word necessarily if you don't make music, but they're doing it for intrinsic reasons. And I think that should be respected because in fact, they're just doing it because they love the things, the experience, the play. It's a hobby. There's a really good book called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, a book that I've read 3 times now. And if you're over 40, I cannot recommend enough. It's basically about the sort of mortality midlife crisis that you have when you enter your 40s, about am I doing enough? Am I going to get it all done? I'm going to die someday is what you start realizing because you're like, I'm halfway through. If I'm lucky, I might be more than halfway through. And so you panic about, am I doing enough? Have I done it all? Am I getting it all done? And basically, the short answer of the book is accept you will not get it all done. And one of the things that it expounds is the notion of having a hobby and having a hobby that isn't something that you're good at. In fact, it goes so far as to say that actually not being good at the hobby is half of what makes the hobby good because you're just doing it for its own intrinsic rewards. You're not doing it as a side hustle. You're not doing it for points. You're not doing it as a thing you're going to grow into this business. Because by attaching all of this sort of stuff to it, all these obligations, these sort of like expectations, you turn something that is supposed to just be intrinsic, something that's just a thing you love and do because you're alive and you get to enjoy doing things you love while you're alive. It turns it into something that has like expectations attached to it, and that colors it because you're then thinking, well, I should only be doing something that's going to like make my life better or like, you know, improve, you know, that I'm building towards. It's going to be a hustle. It's going to earn me money someday. Don't worry. It's not a waste of time. I'm not wasting my time, but you're not wasting your time because the point of life is just to enjoy yourself and to live a fulfilling life in whatever form that takes. It's different for everyone. But what I'm saying is it's really important to have things that you just enjoy doing intrinsically, because if you don't, then I don't think that's necessarily a good life. That's just working all the time. If all you're doing is doing things for extrinsic benefits, for what it can get you, for what clout it will earn you, I think that's a very hollow and frightening way to live. Also, for the reason that, arguably, true happiness doesn't come from external factors, because true happiness has to come from within. If your happiness is conditional on entirely external factors, then can it truly be said to be real happiness? And of course, I realize that there's like basics. Maslow's hierarchy of needs states this whole basic needs of like, you've got to have, you know, food, like some kind of covering, security, emotional companionship and things. I recognize that these are things, but like it is also true that you can't be entirely reliant on external factors. It's possible to be happy with your lot and to say to yourself, I have this tree to keep me shade. I have the fruit that I find on the ground. You know, I know that's like overly simplistic and doesn't really apply if you live in a city or something. But what I'm getting at is it's possible to be happy with many different types of situations. Even if they're not, you know, you don't have the most amazing thing. You don't have the most amazing food, the most amazing house. If you have something, that's probably something. And so I return to this notion of the intrinsic. What is the intrinsic thing you enjoy intrinsically? And I've enjoyed intrinsically playing around with electronic music equipment for 25 plus years. And it's a hobby. I was thinking the other day, it's a hobby. I'm not a professional in the sense I'm just a person who makes music, but that doesn't make me, I have to sometimes call myself a musician. I suppose I say that because in spite of myself, I have created a great deal of music, which I've never really put out in the world. And what I'm saying here is that it isn't actually essential that it be put out for me to have like done it. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, it is true that the doing has to be the reward because, well, for lots of other reasons. I mean, not least, it's very hard to put music out in 2025 in any meaningful way that will get noticed. And so if you're reliant on getting loads of kudos, getting a brilliant Pitchfork review, that isn't going to happen. Like, you're probably not, like, you're going to put music out and no one's going to hear it. It's not going to get discovered. That's, I think, very true of most situations. You're not going to get your music found or heard by more than a few hundred people if you're lucky. That obviously is a blanket generalization. But what I say that because I think that's true of most situations. And my God, there's a lot of music being made. What's the stat of, however, there's 400 million tracks uploaded to Spotify every 30 seconds, I think is the stat. I don't think that's the stat, but there is it's a high number is the point. And so how are you going to get noticed? You're probably not. And that what I'm advocating for here is that it isn't or doesn't have to be necessary. And I think if you make music reliant on being externally validated for having done so, then that's probably going to be a really unhelpful condition because it's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to get externally validated by a lot of people or maybe no one. And ultimately, a final truth is that music, like the person to please with your music is you. You're the only person who it matters whether you like your music or not. And the reason for that is because the only way to know if your music is good or not is to know whether you feel things when you listen to it. The only way to know if your music is good, is my music good or not, you ask yourself, the only answer I care to hear is, do I feel feelings when I listen to it? Do I really like it? If yes, then good. If no, keep writing music. Not if no, bad. Because I don't think you get to write music saying, no one says, I'm going to write some good music today. BRB, going to write great music. Going to write a masterpiece today. It's been ages since I've written a masterpiece. So I think I'm just going to do one today. I better do a masterpiece today. That's not how it works. At least I don't think so. And if you know the way to do that, please leave a comment. But like the reality is you just make more music. If it's not good and you decide that later and you don't feel feelings, write something else. Move on, learn something, write something else. Do something else. Keep doing it. And every now and then you go, fuck, that one was really good. I really feel feelings. I get goosebumps at this moment of this track every single time. Then it's good. And you've done it for its own intrinsic, intrinsically, for me, I felt feelings when I listened to it. That is actually all that matters. And so if anyone's there saying, you know, I think you've spent your money wrong, or, you know, you're in it for the wrong reasons, well, you can tell them to go fuck themselves. Because quite frankly, if you're doing it and you're enjoying yourself and you're feeling feelings when you play around with this stuff, you interact with it, your life on earth is short, and you should do it doing things that bring you joy, whatever form that takes. And it may not rely on what other people think. In fact, I think other people's thoughts are not important in this instance. So go make some music. Thanks.